What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome into DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Anthony Witrado and Daniel Starkand, here to break down a bit of breaking news on a Monday. In the midst of NFL free agency, the Dodgers decided to hand out a little more than $32 million of their own to their manager. Dave Roberts gets a 4-year deal worth $32.4 million. It is the highest ever AAV for a manager. It will cover, according to reports, the last year on his contract, which was 2025, as well as 3 additional ones. Anthony, I'll come to you first. I was surprised that it's only 4 years, and I was surprised that he is making just $100,000 more per year than Craig Counsell was.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by either so much, only because I think this organization tends to stay away from like these super long deals, even if it's for someone who's on their bench and not on the field. So that part didn't surprise me. I figured he'd be the highest paid manager. I wasn't sure if they would go all the way to the 10 million a year mark. Obviously they didn't. I think they just got over the cusp of where the mark was at. So that way he can have that title for now. I think that the reason why this was negotiated for a while is because everybody wanted to make sure that they felt good about it. And we may be surprised that it's, just $100,000 a year or whatever it is more than Craig Counsell's AAV, but I'm sure Dave's very happy with it.
Daniel, there's going to be people that remain Dave Roberts haters, despite the fact that he has the best winning percentage in Major League history, despite the fact he now has 2 World Series titles in addition to a couple World Series appearances on top of that, the consistency, etc. What would you say to the people that cannot believe that Dave Roberts is the highest paid manager in Major League history?
I would say to just give it a rest at this point. Like, I think it's fair to say we've all have had our questions about Dave, like, throughout the years. But any questions you had about him should have been put to bed last October with the job he did managing this team, through the playoffs. I thought he pushed every correct button, and at the end of the day, like, I know he's had a stacked roster. That's what the doubters love to point out, and of course he has with the Dodgers, but you still have to make in-game decisions as a manager, and I think Dave has really progressed as far as that goes. And then you also have to be able to manage a clubhouse, which we know Dave is second to none when it comes to that. Like, that's always been the case. So when you look at Dave Roberts right now, he's really the full package, and this was a well-deserved new deal. I'm with you, Jeff. I probably expected a little more money, maybe an extra year here, but at the end of the day, he made it clear he wants to stay. So it's not like he was working with a ton of leverage to get more money, and he is the highest paid manager. So it feels like everybody wins here.
Yeah, Daniel, on that note, I remember having Andy McCullough of The Athletic, a national guy, on this show, and I kind of asked him, I said, hey, Craig Counsell was making way more than any other manager in Major League Baseball. He was at 8, and I don't think anybody else was over like 5.5. And so I speculated, hey, Andy, is it possible the Dodgers talk to Dave Roberts and say, look, we know Counsell's making 8. That's crazy. Nobody's ever going to do that again. And that Dave was going to get less than Counsell. And McCullough thought, like, almost laughed and said, that's ridiculous. Like, of course, Dave Roberts is going to get more money. I asked Bob Nightingale the same question. We were at spring training. Like, are we talking a 5-year, $50 million deal? And yet, Daniel, he gets a tad more than Craig Counsell did, but only 3 additional years on his contract. Do you think, like, is it possible that Dave didn't want more years? Like, he said, hey, let's just do 4, and we have enough of a working agreement that if I want to keep managing after 4 years, like, how do you think they landed at just a tick more than Craig Counsell was making?
To be honest, I think you mentioned football at the beginning of this. I'm going to go back to football with a little comparison here. I compare this to the Matthew Stafford situation with the Rams, where, he probably could have not signed this deal and went elsewhere and got more money. But at the end of the day, staying in LA makes the most sense for him. And I'm talking about both Stafford and Dave Roberts in this situation. So I think if you're Dave Roberts, you probably weren't going to push too hard to get an extra year, an extra couple million or whatever, just because you love being in LA, being the manager of the Dodgers. And, when you have the hardware that Dave has, I feel like at this point, he doesn't really have to worry about the long-term security, as much. I would say he has a job as the manager of the Dodgers as long as he wants it. So I just feel like, we're getting close to opening day here. I know they're, they probably had some sort of deadline to get something done, and it got to the point where it was good enough for Dave, and the Dodgers probably weren't willing to go much higher, so they just said enough is enough and closed the deal.
Yeah, Anthony, it's been an A offseason for the Dodgers. The cherry on top, the last move, 8 days before opening day, is now Dave Roberts is locked up. What do you think this does just inside of the locker room, inside of the organization, to kind of feel like this one last thing that was hanging over their heads that everybody knew needed to get done is now done?
Yeah, I think they're going to be really happy for him. I wouldn't be surprised if, there's a prank or two pulled on him with, with some checks or things like that for dinner, or, something along those lines. But, he's going to get a whole bunch of attaboys from a lot of these guys, because I think they were, like you said, they were maybe waiting for this and, hoping that it would come sooner rather than later. And it has. I think there's a couple of things too to add to what Daniel said, because I agreed with all of his points. I think one of the other things is in asking, does Dave actually want a contract that lasts that long? Look, I think creeping just above Counsell's number was partly because the gap between now those two managers and basically the rest of the other 28 guys is so wide that it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to go much higher than that. I'm sure Dave understood that. Like it's him and Counsell, a massive Grand Canyon gap, and then all the other guys, right?
Yeah.
So I think that plays into it as well. Also, Dave and his representation may have said, look, let's take the extra 3 years, because by the end of those 3 years, like there's probably a conversation of like, look, Dave, you're here as long as you want to be. You tell us, we'll just do this contract for however long we do it, right? And maybe they said, we'll do the extra 3 years because after those 3 years, there may be 5 more managers who have crept up into this neighborhood. And so you might get paid again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the guy who signs an extension, but only buys out, until the year, the age 28 or something, because he wants that second deal, something like that. So this may be part of that thinking as well for Dave.
Yeah, and we know it was important for him to surpass Counsell, because he wanted to raise the floor for a bunch of managers and all future deals. He wanted to be the guy that, to your point, the Counsell thing was, I think, for a while looked at kind of like the Deshaun Watson contract in the NFL, where it's like, yes, technically that happened, but where nobody's going to accept it as a starting point for negotiations. Right. But as soon as the second deal gets done, as soon as Dave Roberts is now making 8.1 per year, every manager from now on is going to be able to say it's not an outlier. There's now 2 of these, and yeah, sure, Counsell was a free agent. Yeah, sure, Dave Roberts has won 2 World Series, highest winning percentage ever. But, that's the deal that I want. And so
if you think now that your manager and your organization is at that level, this is now the going rate.
Totally. And obviously Dave Roberts deserves every penny of it. And to your point, like, I don't think he's worried about not having a job in 3 years if things don't go the way that he wants to on this one. Daniel, I'll give you the last word here. Any final thoughts? Again, we knew the Dodgers wanted to get this done before they leave for Japan, which is, I believe, in just a couple of days. So mission accomplished on that front.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like there's probably just like a sense of relief that this is done with and they can move on. Like, obviously, a manager's salary doesn't affect, the luxury tax or anything like that at all. So I'm happy that Dave, got what he deserved. And, he's clearly the right man for the job, as we saw last October. So now that this is over with, we could, get ready for opening day here and focus on the season.
8 days away until the Dodgers are playing real baseball games that count. And on top of everything else they've done this offseason, like we said, there's nothing hanging over them anymore, because Dave Roberts gets a 4-year deal, reportedly worth $32.4 million. Again, resetting the market, the highest AAV for a manager in Major League history. That is Anthony Witrado and Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. Folks, enjoy the rest of your day. As always, go Dodgers.